Hey, my name is Zach Reynolds. I'm currently studying chemical engineering. For about the last 7 years, I've been enthralled with chemistry and its many applications. So in this video, I'm going to try and introduce one of the most basic yet necessary and consistently relied upon separation techniques. So simple distillation is a technique that utilizes the difference in boiling points for two or more compounds in a mixture. This idea is used in everyday life, from separating salt and water to distilling liquor. All right, so distillation has been used throughout history to help spur scientific and medical advances. Um, you know, the current status of distillation is credited to Jabir Hayyan in approximately 800 CE, but distillation has been around for a while before that. We just never really had a process. From its conception, it was used for separating salt and water, for creating bombs and poultices, for medicinal purposes, perfumes, and a little bit later in history, it was used for alcohol. The process expanded and grew more refined as scholars and scientists kind of came to understand the process a little bit better. Once we had more, scientific methods to actually understand what was happening, the process blossomed. Today, we have many industries and practices that utilize distillation. Some of them, that benefit directly from distillation are water treatment, petroleum, food processing, material manufacturing, mining, pharmaceuticals. There's also a bunch of different types of distillation. But before we start talking about that, it's important to know that there's two different process types of distillation. There's batch and continuous. Batch, you add stuff into a flask, a column, and you let it run to distillation until it ends. Continuous materials continuously added, allowing the process to kind of run at a 24/7 pace. From there, we have simple fractional steam and vacuum distillation. There's also some others, but a lot of them have super specific uses, so they don't get named as often. From there, sorry, just switching slides. We have, simple distillation put simply. So it's super practically used for chemistry students. People in general and organic chemistry labs use it. The easiest way to describe distillation, especially simple distillation, is the separation of binary mixtures. So you have two compounds, and you're trying to differentiate and separate them. So some important information before you kind of get into it. Simple distillation works on the rule of thumb that the compounds that have a difference in boiling point of approximately 25 degrees Celsius. You're going to have error. If you only run the process one time, you're going to have error. The more you distill it, the less error that you have. If the boiling points are relatively similar, and if you're inexperienced and everything, then you will have some error, and that's totally okay and totally be accounted for. Distillation relies on boiling point. However, vapor pressure is the core of boiling point. So before you do any kind of distillation, talk to a professional or a scholar in your area and make sure that you understand how atmosphere and vapor pressure is kind of going to change your process up a little bit. So from there, we go to setup, and that is kind of described in this picture here. So we're going to start one heating mantle hot plate. In the picture, they're using a hot plate. They have the flask suspended in some kind of liquid. They're heating the liquid and in turn heating the flask. Speaking of flask, number two is the round bottom flask. That's just super common method of heating things. This setup is really similar to what you would see in most organic chemistry labs, especially at the university level. Then you move up, you have the column with a three-way adapter. You have a thermometer that measures the temperature of the vapor pressure, not the liquid. You have the condensing rod, a water inlet, a water outlet, and then the collection flask. So to begin this process, it's important, check all of your connections, make sure there's not going to be any kind of leaks, gas leaks, or anything like that. Make sure all your hoses are connected correctly. But to make sure that it's really going to work, you have to make sure that the water is going through the condensing rod. Everything looks good. You have it inlet on the bottom, outlet on the top. But moving forward, a super easy example to grasp of distillation is the distillation of ethanol and water. So ethanol's boiling point is about 78 degrees Celsius. Water's is about 100 degrees Celsius. Make sure that you monitor the vapor pressure, or in turn the vapor temperature above the flask, not in the flask. So for distillation, it's important you know the amount of starting quantities of the materials, so that you know when the appropriate amount has been collected. Other than that, simple distillation is pretty much just heat it up, let it boil. It'll collect. Once you know that you have around the range that you thought you were going to collect, you're going to go ahead and turn it off. So simple distillation in conclusion, right? Simple distillation is commonly used in chemistry. Labs at the university level teach students separation techniques, and then all the way up into the industry, it's used for, as I said, pharmaceuticals, liquor, for different technical applications for chemists. Super easy example, Jack Daniels. They use a continuous distillation tactic, so they're able to pump out bourbon all day long. Leaper's Fork is also another local brewery. They use batch distillation. They only have one still, and that's the only one that they use. They don't have it on continuously. They just put in what they have, and then they, end up with their final product. So I'd like to thank all of you for listening and learning with me. The idea of simple distillation has been discussed and hopefully makes a little bit more sense and provide some realism to, something that otherwise might be a little bit distant to you. As an aspiring chemical engineer, it's super important for us to learn it and to understand the process. It allows us to manipulate materials around the world for the benefit of everybody involved. And again, I just want to say thank you and hope that maybe your interest has been piqued just like mine. Thank you.